Tonight, Poilievre's push for a fall election. The call to ditch the deal with the Trudeau Liberals.
He will not quit. He must be fired. And the person to do it is Jagmeet Singh.
The reasoning and the response from the NDP. Kamala Harris stands her ground in a high-stakes interview.
My values have not changed.
Whooping cough warning.
I expect that when the kids go back to school, there will be an increase.
Plus, peanut anxiety for parents.
We don't ban foods anymore.
And cashing in on the cruise.
They're great for economic boost, but also they just really give a great vibe to a city.
The luxury voyage with a lucrative stop in St. John's.
Coming in here was gorgeous.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Anne-Marie Meadowake.
Good evening. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants a federal election this fall. But to have that, he needs Jagmeet Singh to drop his deal with the Trudeau Liberals, something Poilievre publicly asked him to do today. That agreement is signed until June 2025, but the NDP is not ready to walk away yet. CTV's Rachel Aiello attended Poilievre's press conference today and starts us off tonight.
Standing in front of where the Prime Minister enters Parliament, Pierre Poilievre called on Jagmeet Singh to help get Justin Trudeau out of office.
Break the costly coalition with Trudeau to trigger a carbon tax election where Canadians can choose.
The Conservative leader wants the NDP to force a fall federal election by voting to bring down the minority government when the House resumes next month. Poilievre says the Liberal NDP deal needs to end because Trudeau demonstrated this summer that nothing will change for Canadians and they can't afford to wait another year. But going to the polls early would also be to the Conservatives' advantage.
Pierre Poilievre's leading on the ballot. He's leading on the preferred prime minister. Not a big surprise. He wants an election.
Through the two-party pact signed in 2022, Singh has advanced policies such as dental and pharmacare, progress his party is worried a Conservative government would put in peril. Responding to Poilievre's pressure campaign, the NDP say that leaving the deal is always on the table, but Poilievre wants to win an election because he wants to cut. The Liberals say they're confident their arrangement with the NDP will go the distance and view Poilievre's push for an early election as a sign that he's getting worried.
I think it's pretty pathetic that the good news, the good economic news that we are seeing for Canada and Canadians, the Conservatives feel is bad news for them.
Poilievre is accusing Singh of keeping Trudeau in power long enough to qualify for his MP pension, something the Conservative leader has already secured. The NDP leader will be eligible as of February, well ahead of the June expiry of the Supply and Confidence Agreement. Anne-Marie?
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so who could an early election benefit besides Pierre Poilievre? For that, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. Vashi, what's your take on this, and what are the conversations around the timing?
Well, from a purely political perspective, Anne-Marie, I think there's hardly any chance that the NDP acquiesces to this and decides rather to go to an early election. There is simply no electoral imperative to do so. They have not benefited from the Liberals' dwindling fortunes in public opinion polls at all. And as it stands right now, if they were to go to the polls, they would likely lose seats, not even gain them. So there's not really the possibility of that happening, I would wager to say, anytime soon. As for why Pierre Poilievre is doing this now, from my conversations with people inside Conservative circles and particularly around Pierre Poilievre, they have been instructed to act as though they are 20 points behind, not 20 points ahead. Not let things go. Make sure you are out there opposing stuff all the time. So I think this is part and parcel of that. The one sort of caveat I would add to that is keep paying close attention to not just what Poilievre says, but what he doesn't say. He's not really answering. There were only a few questions, less than a handful. Didn't give a lot of specific answers, in particular to the questions that Liberals and NDP have been posing, which are, what are you going to roll back? If you're going to spend less money, what are you going to spend less on? Which big programs that they support are you going to roll back? He didn't say exactly what he would do. He characterized those as hypothetical questions. I expect those questions will continue coming over the near future. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, they certainly will. Thank you, Vashi. Well, with just 67 days left to go until Election Day in the U.S., Kamala Harris sat down for her first interview since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Joined by her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, she faced some pointed questions from CNN's Dana Bash on shifting policy positions.
My values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
Well, CTV's political analyst Eric Ham is joining us now. And Eric, Americans had been waiting to hear from Harris not only about her hopes for becoming president, but also her plans and policies if she wins. And she spoke in this interview about economy, housing, the war in Gaza. What did you make of this interview?
Well, I think clearly more Americans would probably like to see and hear more from Kamala Harris in these types of settings where people can learn more about her vision, more importantly about her policies, but also she's got a running mate that people are still trying to get to know. And I think people wanted to hear more about him, about his story, and also how he's led the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, a lot was made of Harris sitting down with her VP running mate, Tim Walz. Her opponent accused her of being too scared to do this kind of interview alone. What did you make of this 2-person format? Did it work for them?
I don't think it worked in the sense that we just didn't hear enough from the both of them and what do they mean for each other as a ticket. This seemed more of an interview with Kamala Harris, and quite frankly, it looked as though that Governor Walz was there as her support crutch, and there just wasn't enough, I think, focused on him. And he certainly has a very compelling story, and I thought there was just a missed opportunity for the interviewer to actually engage in his story.
Well, something new I learned, and I think might be new to a lot of people, is that Kamala Harris and Trump have never spoken face-to-face. So they're going to get that opportunity in a couple weeks with the September 10th debate. But in the meantime, Donald Trump did comment on the interview before it aired at a town hall in Wisconsin. Let's let everybody hear what he had to say.
It was a tape. We're doing it live. Why are we doing it live and she's doing it taped? But
that's right. He's real.
But she was sitting behind that desk, this massive desk, and she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did with Kim Jong-un.
What do you make of this, Eric?
Well, I think given that we're now seeing new polling data that shows that Kamala Harris is beginning to take a lead in the race, both nationally and many of these key battleground states, I think we're going to continue to see Donald Trump go after Kamala Harris now until that actual debate takes place in Philadelphia.
All right, Eric Ham, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
In Japan, at least 4 people are dead and more than 80 injured after the country was hit by one of the strongest typhoons in decades. Typhoon Shan has been downgraded to a tropical storm, but it is wreaking havoc with rain and wind gusts up to 250 kilometers an hour. More than 5 million people in southern Japan have been told to evacuate. Well, the Israeli military says it has killed 5 more militants in one of its largest assaults in the occupied West Bank. At least 15 Palestinians have died since troops raided the territory yesterday. In Gaza, there are no signs of a ceasefire, but Israel has agreed to some humanitarian pauses for polio vaccinations.
I'm not going to say this is the ideal way forward, but this is a workable way forward. Not doing anything would be really bad. We have to stop this transmission in Gaza.
The pause in fighting, expected to start this weekend, will allow around 640,000 children to be vaccinated. Here at home, cases of whooping cough have more than tripled in some provinces, and healthcare officials are concerned those numbers could spike again as kids head back to school. CTV's Adrian Gobriel with what's behind the increase and how you can protect yourself.
A bacterial infection that packs a blistering bite.
You can cough, and at the end of it, you might vomit. You can have like hemorrhages in your eye.
Cases of pertussis, known commonly as whooping cough, while rare, can lead to death. Across Canada, the virus is on the rise. Quebec has recorded a staggering 11,670 cases so far this year, compared to its annual average of 562. As of June, 470 cases were reported in Ontario, which is more than quadruple the average number. And just last week, New Brunswick declared a province-wide outbreak with 141 cases reported this year, following an average of just 34, with cases expected to climb.
You can have someone who has a cold-like symptoms when it's actually pertussis, and they could be spreading it. So expect that when the kids go back to school, there will be an increase.
Pertussis is a cyclical disease which peaks in 2 to 5 year intervals. According to some infectious disease specialists, vaccine hesitancy isn't the only culprit, but it's a factor.
Some combination of cycles of whooping cough, waning immunity, vaccine status as well, including people who might not be up to date on vaccines.
Canada's routine immunization program for children does protect against whooping cough beginning at 2 months old, followed by booster shots later in childhood and adolescence. The message from health officials is simple.
Make sure you're up to date on your vaccinations. You can go to public health specialists and public health clinics that are all over the country. They can easily walk through this with you and your family. This vaccine is free, it's readily available, and it does a good job to reduce the risk of infection.
The virus is most dangerous for young children, especially those who haven't completed all of their vaccines, though doctors are quick to point out that anyone at any age can contract this infection. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
And the beginning of the school year can be a particularly anxious time, perhaps more so for the parents of the nearly 10% of children with food allergies. Across the country, some schools have done away with bans on allergens like peanuts, leaving parents and advocates concerned about how to keep kids safe. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin reports.
Come on in.
Back to school time, back to packing lunches. For Izzy, going into grade 2, no nuts on the menu. She's allergic.
She has her tomato Alfredo, which is her favorite thing, and then peanut-free as much as we can.
But there's now no strict no peanut or no nut rule here. While some still suggest avoiding certain foods, school boards have increasingly moved away from aiming for allergen-free zones.
Actually, that we don't know that it's an effective way of preventing food allergies in schools. So what we do instead is that we work on prevention.
Research has shown bans create a false sense of security and cover only certain allergies. Experts say that means teachers, staff have to be prepared to recognize and treat reactions fast and comfortably use EpiPens.
If it crosses your mind that your child, or that child, not your child, that child, might need an epinephrine, it's better to give it than be sorry, because the side effects are basically non-existent.
Some provinces have laws on how schools should handle allergies, but across the board, advocates say boosting staff education is key.
Knowing what is the trigger, knowing how to recognize the signs and symptoms. Even if someone is diagnosed with food allergies, it's not always so easy to know what's happening.
Janine Kafaro's daughter, Nora, is starting kindergarten. She has a series of severe allergies.
I would never expect other parents to not send eggs or sesame or avocado. Like, I can't expect it of them, but what I would love other parents to know is, like, maybe tell your kids, hey, you know what, don't share your food. Don't put your fingers in your friends' lunches.
And that's a lesson the school dietitian here teaches, getting everyone to play a part in keeping kids safe.
It's a lot about cleaning your hands before you eat. It's about cleaning your desk before and after you eat. It's about respecting also the other kids that might have allergies.
And experts say they'll be monitoring to see whether any changes can be brought forward to make sure children are safe. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
A former doctor in Manitoba has been sentenced to 12 years in prison for sexually assaulting female patients.
The doctor-patient relationship is based on trust. Mr. Bissonnette was able to sexually assault these women because many of them did not know what the exams entailed, or they did not feel comfortable speaking up, or they trusted that what he was doing was medically necessary.
Arcel Bissonnette sexually assaulted 7 patients between 2001 and 2017. The attacks happened during physical exams while he was a doctor at the St. Anne Hospital just outside of Winnipeg. And police near Toronto say a man wanted for first-degree murder has fled the country.
Canada Border Services Agency has confirmed to our investigators that Zhejiang Marco Hu, a 47-year-old from the city of Markham, has traveled to Hong Kong.
Hu is accused in the murder of a 56-year-old realtor this month. The burned remains of Yukying Anita Moy were found 4 days after she was reported missing. Investigators will now ask Interpol for a red notice requesting help from international law enforcement to catch the suspect. Well, coming up.
We simply can't achieve the very aggressive sales targets the government has set.
Pumping the brakes on Ottawa's EV roadmap. Plus, the world-class cruise ship making waves in St. John's. RCMP in North Vancouver have released new images to the public to try and identify a suspect in a disturbing road rage incident earlier this month. Now, the suspect is described as a heavyset Asian man in his 30s, allegedly tailgated a senior and then exited his vehicle and hit him in the face with a baton, knocking his teeth out. He drives a Tesla Model 3 with black rims. Well, sales of electric vehicles are nowhere near what the federal government needs them to be if they want to hit their goal of 60% of auto sales by 2030. As CTV's Judy Trin found out, the main driver behind the low numbers is cost.
This dealership is doing brisk sales in EVs, selling about 25 low-emission vehicles a month.
We're certainly seeing a tremendous demand for these vehicles. It's growing month to month. It's very encouraging to see.
But the growth isn't keeping pace with the targets the federal government wants the industry to meet. Currently, 11% of all new sales are electric. By 2026, the federal government wants EV sales to account for 20% of all new vehicles. That target climbs to 60% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. The parliamentary budget officer says those targets won't be met unless the cost of an EV is priced thousands of dollars less than a traditional automobile.
The relative price of EVs versus combustion engine cars would need to go down by 31%. So total cost of ownership, that means the cost of the vehicles themselves would probably need either to come down or the gas-powered cars price going up.
The average cost of an electric vehicle is $73,000, a price that's $15,000 higher than gas-powered cars. When you factor in fuel prices, an EV costs less over the long term, but sales have stalled, just as incentives are being rolled back.
Quebec has decided to close its program in 2027. British Columbia has tightened the requirements, making it less accessible to more residents, and the federal government's program is very rapidly running out of money. We simply can't achieve the very aggressive sales targets the government has set.
Consumers also won't have access to cheap Chinese vehicles. Earlier this week, the Trudeau government slapped 100% tariffs on EVs made in China, a move in line with the U.S. to protect the North American industry. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, pedaling to the metal.
It took me by surprise.
Canada is on the board at the Paris Paralympics. Canadian athletes are off to a great start on the opening day of competition at the Paris Paralympics. And the first one to take the podium says it took her by surprise.
I wasn't even sure that I was going to make the Paralympic team this year. And so to come here and, have the goal of doing the best that I could do on that day, end up resulting in a medal, it was just more than I ever could have hoped for.
36-year-old track cyclist Kate O'Brien raced to a stunning bronze in the women's time trial. And one of Canada's most decorated para-swimmers, Arielle Rivard, also took home bronze today in women's 50-meter freestyle. This is her 11th competitive medal. And fresh off winning gold at the Olympics with Team USA, basketball star Steph Curry is now the first NBA player to earn more than $60 million in a single season. The 36-year-old agreed to a one-year extension with the Golden State Warriors worth $62.6 million, keeping him with the team through the 2026-2027 season. And a priceless view over the skies of Saskatchewan. So here's some time-lapse video. This captured the northern lights dancing over the sky in Regina. It was a beautiful display of green and pink lights. It's an early showing for Mother Nature. The best times to typically view the aurora borealis in Saskatchewan are September and October. Coming up after the break, around the world in 200 days.
Meeting so many different people, seeing the wonders of the world.
With a stunning Atlantic sojourn. The population of St. John's has gotten just a little bit larger, at least for tonight. 2,500 guests traveling the world in a 9-month-long luxury cruise are spending the evening. And as CTV's Garrett Berry tells us, it appears to be a win-win for passengers and local residents.
Lima, Dubai, and for the only scheduled Canadian stop, St. John's.
Meeting so many different people, seeing the wonders of the world, it's been amazing.
Some of these passengers have been on board for more than 260 days, paying between $60,000 and $120,000.
Yeah, it was huge, and there was so much work to get ready for it. You know, medications, what do you pack?
The Serenade of the Sea is almost 300 meters long, brought 2,500 passengers into St. John's this morning. Part of their ultimate world cruise package, a first of its kind for company Royal Caribbean, and considerably longer than some competitors' offerings. Passengers keep the same room for the whole trip, marking holidays on board and cruising for some of the great wonders of the world.
We've seen so many things that you read about and hope maybe one day I'll get to do it. We decided to do it now, and it's been amazing.
The city of St. John's has been pushing hard to attract these boats during tourism season.
Quite a lot of competition. Like a lot of ports want these cruise ships in. They're great for economic boost, but also they just really give a great vibe to a city.
And right on the eastern edge of the continent, St. John's is a natural resting point.
A lot of people like being at sea, but it's, occasionally you need a break. And it's nice to go on land, feel the land.
Today, this one turned heads for just how long these passengers have been touring. For some, it was a spur-of-the-moment decision.
Kids sent it to us as a text message several years ago, and, oh, it's a joke, haha, wouldn't this be fun? And 6 days later, we sent them a text confirming we were going.
Tomorrow, passengers head back down the eastern seaboard for New York, the Caribbean, before eventually finishing their 9-month journey in Miami in September. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Well, in case any of them are watching, welcome to Canada. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Have a good night.